we're so blessed that so many of our sisters and one associate at this moment have gone or will complete going in the summer. At this moment, Charlene Kostick is in Tucson, and Mary Helen Byrne and Joan Sullivan are in Laredo. So our prayers are with them, and we're grateful for them. We're also grateful that the congregation has been so abundantly blessed, and we give thanks that we're able to share our abundance with so many. So at this point, I'd like to ask the folks who are going to share today, and you might want, we're in the little box in the right-hand corner where it says view, you may want to change that view to speaker view, and that will allow the person who is speaking to be the main person you see. So Sharon, if you don't mind starting, just introduce yourself and tell us where you served.
I'm Sharon White, and Sister of St. Joseph, and I was in McAllen, Texas.
Thanks. Someone else?
I'm Pat McGinley, and I was in Laredo, Texas.
Thanks, Pat.
I'm Kate Cole, and I also was in Laredo, Texas.
And I'm Mary Ann Zakreski. I was in Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas.
I'm Seal Cavanaugh, and I was in McAllen, Texas.
I'm Kathy Burton, and I was in McAllen, Texas.
Thanks so much. There are also some people who have joined us who have shared in these experiences as well. So I'm sure the stories we hear today will be reminders of similar experiences that you may have had while you were there. And for the rest of us, we'll be anxious to hear. It gives us a chance to at least have a glimpse of what you experienced today. So if we could now, we have a little prayer and a little inspirational music to begin. So Rose, whenever you're ready.
When the walls fell and the hungry child cried out for help, did you hear the sound? Did your heart break? Does your heart break now? Can I feel it in my soul? Can I see you? I'm alone. Can the blind have sight? Have sight? When you see us all alone, can you hear your people, Lord? Can the blind have sight? Have sight?
A moment of grace. God of our wandering ancestors, long have we known that your heart is with the refugee, that you were born into time in a family of refugees fleeing violence in their homeland, who then gathered up their hungry child and fled into alien country. Their cry, your cry, resounds through the ages. Will you let me in?
Give us hearts that break open when our brothers and sisters turn to us with that same cry. Then surely all these things will follow. Ears will no longer turn deaf to their voices. Eyes will see a moment for grace instead of threat.
Tongues will not be silenced, but will instead advocate. And hands will reach out, working for peace in their homeland, working for injustice in the lands where they seek safe haven. God of our wandering ancestors, may they find a friend in us and make us worthy of the refuge we have found in you. Amen.
Amen, and thank you. We're hoping that each person who shares will give us a glimpse of their experience. We'll see if we have time at the end. We'll invite questions or comments. Yesterday we had the first one and we ended up with just a little bit of time at the end. So we're certainly, we'll see where this goes. I'm wondering, Marianne Zakreski, would you like to go first? Because San Antonio, you're the only one who got to San Antonio, and we'd be happy to hear from your experience.
Okay, sure. So Freeman Coliseum, I didn't know what to expect because I saw hundreds of cars filing in the morning. And there was a lot of security. I had to be checked and escorted in. And that was just from the parking lot. And then I needed to get a COVID test. And I went for an ID, general ID, and then a Catholic Charities ID. And finally, I got over there where the refugee boys were being housed. And there was about 800 boys there at the time. Let me just preface this by saying that the Freeman Coliseum, there were things that happening there, like, you know, like it would be like Citizens Park. You know, they have concerts there, they have rodeos there, they have stock car races there. So it was huge. And so when I went in, I was kind of like the size of the place was overwhelming. And so we were, the first day we just kind of were free roaming around, and we saw the boys who were there. There were boys from 13 to 17 years old. So that was the population. But meanwhile, there was also workers who were hired, and that's what all those cars were. People came from all over the country and were there for several weeks, like up to 6 weeks. What was heartening is that they gave employment to people from the area and people who needed a job, and they certainly grew. They certainly grew in love with the boys. They cared about them very much and cried when they were leaving. And the goal, especially when I went, was to place the boys elsewhere, because the federal government had rented the Coliseum till the end of May. So at its peak, there was 2,200 boys there. When I went there, there was 800. When I left, there was 600. So anyway, one day, what they had done is they divided the boys into pods by beds. So there was 30 beds to a pod, and there was like 35 pods in one room. In its peak, there was 2 full rooms like that. So there was 2 adults there for each pod. So the day I was on the pod, I was walking in at 7:30, and we had to wake them up. And I was kind of stunned because they got up and they went right to breakfast. And I thought, oh my gosh, they couldn't go to the bathroom. They couldn't do any of that. And I was thinking, how did they do that? Then later I found out that they got them up at 5:30 to brush their teeth and go to the bathroom. So they were ready for breakfast at 7:30.
Mm.
So anyway, besides the adults in the pods, there was other workers too who came in daily. There was security, there was doctors, counselors, supervisors, and caseworkers. Some people came, they traveled in just to stay there. A lot of the sisters, there were Maranolas and Dominicans, and one sister, St. Joseph in Canada. And a lot of them stayed for weeks. And then one or two of them went off to another, I think to Laredo. And they were lovely. So what happened then after the day proceeded, going back to breakfast, after breakfast, they lined up for the bathroom again. And you have to get the picture of like 800 people wrapped around. They had to go out to the outskirts of the Coliseum, and they were all dressed alike in gray sweats, and so that was kind of it. It kind of reminded me of the bread line, Eichenberg's bread line. I could just see. So getting close and intimate with them is not what happened with me too much, because I don't know Spanish. But during my day in the pod, I was sitting there, and I noticed that some of them wanted to learn their English because they were coming to America and they were practicing. So of course I can do that. So I sat down with them, and I was working with this one or two, and then all of a sudden there was 5 around, and it was, and they stayed there, and they just wouldn't go. They just wanted, and I noticed that they really just wanted the presence of an adult. And that happened a couple other times. So then the other thing was, during the day, they could make some phone calls, and they could call their family back in their country of origin, or they could call their caseworker, or they could call their aunts and uncles in the United States. And some of them were very happy, and others of them just were very distraught. And I do remember they had set up a couple altars, a couple, how the Spanish, they set up altars in their homes and altars. Well, they had set up a couple, and there was this one in that particular day, this boy, he just put his head down on the table, and then he went over to the altar of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and he just threw himself down in front of the statue. So that was pretty moving for me. So what else did they do during the day? They had no chairs. That was the other piece. There were no chairs there. Oh, except around the perimeter, they had some arts and crafts. So a lot of them went, and they were doing that. They did origami. They did all kinds of things that looked like small, repetitive things. Like I think a lot of Hispanic cultures, they do things with embroidery and stitching, and they were doing origami, and they were also painting, and they were making things for their pod leaders, or they were making things for the people that they were going to see when they left. So I don't know how long I've talked, but I just wanted to say.
You're fine, Mir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so when there was a few family reunifications there, and the Marinol sister, I hooked up with 2 Marinol sisters, and the one sister had her sister, her blood sister, work for Health and Human Services, and she was working on the caseworkers, on the cases for the boys, and they arranged for a family to come pick up. Well, what they do is they take the boy and they put him in a golf cart and they take him all the way out till we were kind of invited to go and witness this, where they would be reunified with the family that would come and pick them up. And it was a great time in particular. But one that happened, one of the boys was supposed to be meeting his father, but he never met his father before. So it was, I don't know how he might have felt. I don't know how he might have felt seeing this man who was supposed to be his father for the very first time. But the sad story is those whose connections did not work out, they were going to be moved to another center, maybe Laredo. I heard on the last day they were going to Del Rio, which is a town on the border. And somebody said, pray for those boys because they're probably terrified they're going to go back to Mexico because it's right on the border. So, so that was that. So that was my experience. And then I didn't really feel, when I could work with the boys with English, I like that. And then we were doing God's Eyes, I like that. But the cap for me was when I was sitting in the airport ready to come home in San Antonio. And don't you know, 2 of the boys came in who were going to their new family. And I recognized them. And the one came over and sat right next to me for the entire time. And he didn't look at me. And they didn't make a whole lot of eye contact. Maybe because we couldn't talk together, or we were encouraged not to really ask them their stories. But I felt that he was one of the ones that sat with me. And I felt, even though I couldn't talk, even though I couldn't really speak their language, there was another language of presence that we both understood. And that was a very moving moment for me. I thought about that a lot when I came back home. And he went someplace in Denver, I guess. My connection was in Denver too. But so anyway, that's kind of what it was like. I can't kind of get it all because it was the experience was in such a massive space. And but I was happy that I went. I was happy for the intimate moments I had. And I have to say, hats off to the way it was organized. The kids were well loved, well taken care of. It might have been regimented, but it almost had to be regimented because they had so many people. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Mir. Thank you. Maybe we could just take a minute or two just to, hold in our hearts those boys that Marianne encountered there. And maybe next we could move to Laredo. Kay Call, if you would, after a few moments, just begin your sharing. Thanks.
Well, first, I have to say that the whole way that this was organized was an example of collaboration and what great communication connections we have as religious sisters. The Catholic Charities contacting LCWR, and then our individual congregations contacting us and inviting us, and the response. It just speaks a lot about the value of our vocation, and whatever form religious life will be in the future, it's going to be one that is needed, definitely. And anyone that I've talked with, those sisters that I met down there, and anyone who had been there and I've seen lately, they talked about how their hearts were touched. And they were. My heart definitely was touched. It's a world of difference to encounter someone. My work with immigration has been around the detention centers, marching, having vigil prayers, and protesting, and even going into the detention center and being a visitor to one. But this way of being part of their journey, of connecting with them before they have really entered into the full process of what they came for, is very special to me, very special. And their faces, even though they're masked, there was so much energy coming through their faces, their eyes, the movement of their heads. The first week it was women, young women with their young children. And I just began to think, what must it have been like to travel that whole journey that they did? Many, longer than others, coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, so many different places. And the children, what was it like, carrying your child, taking another one by the hand, all the needs of children along the way, and then those that you couldn't satisfy. Our place in Laredo was the last stop for them before they made contact with their family members or whoever was going to sponsor them, be responsible for them while their court case would come up. I've been to court with immigrants. I've sat in the court and I've expressed my attention for them and my desire to be with them. And I know how valuable and how expressive that is. When I think of all the possibilities that these people saw when they left their homeland, just possibilities, but possibilities were enough to enable them to travel because of what they were enduring in their home countries. Yes, our vice president said, don't come because we're going to take care of the root causes of migration. Well, that's all well and good. It has to be done. But don't say don't come. Don't say don't come. These people will do anything to escape what they are going through. And they expressed as much. One woman said, only God knows what I've been through. So anything is better than that. And don't we who believe in miracles, don't we when we pray, don't we believe in possibilities? No matter how the outcome appears to be, doctors have said, that's it, hopeless case. Or you're going to lose your job and it seems inevitable because others have and you're in the same caliber as they. But we believe in miracles. We pray because we know we can change things. And I'm thinking of David, when David's little baby was so sick, he fasted, he prayed, and his servants were so concerned about David. How could they tell David that the baby died? And David gets up and celebrates. He calls for a banquet because he said, when the child lived, I could do something. I believed I could do something. But when the child died, there's nothing I can do. God has spoken. So that's how we live. And we have to do what we can. We have to at least show up, and then God will show us. Not any one of us really knew what we were going to experience when we went, I don't believe. But if we show up, God will show us. And even afterwards, after we're gone, after the time has passed, more things will rise up within us and we'll know. Last night, after hearing Bethany, Clarissa, Rosemary, and Celeste share about the 1,700 1,700 migrants who arrived at McAllen, and how they did what they could. That's all. They did what they could with those numbers. And I'd say, Rosemary, I really smiled when you said that your description of the ROPA room was an impossible situation, an impossible job. And I smiled because I spent most of my time at the ROPA room, not nearly as many people as you were dealing with, but nonetheless, I could say, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, it caught me in my Achilles heel. A young boy was in and out of the clothing room, and he was picking up things, and he came with different adults. And so when I say it got me in my Achilles heel, my heart that was full of compassion went down to my heel and went into compulsion, my compulsion. And as soon as I caught myself and realized, what am I doing? I went over to the young boy and held his hand and said, I'm here as your friend. I am so sorry, because I had told him, don't come back again. Don't come back again, just with a show of hands and a wagging of the finger. Don't come back again. When I told him I was sorry, I said, and can you say you're sorry? And he did. And I felt something leave me. The same way if you're filled with indigestion and it goes. I felt something leave me. And that was the relief. That was the experience that my compassion turned to compulsion, but through confession, it brought me back. It brought me back. So the experience sometimes isn't just for those that we're helping and we're giving them the care. It's for us too. We're invited places, and we're invited to see people and meet them because there's something that they have to tell us about ourselves, or they have to help us with ourselves. I'm thinking of another boy. There was a little boy who was outside. Now, Laredo has a large field, just, a plain, nothing attractive about it at all. But that's where, the chairs were set up there for the people to sit on. And the food was brought out on a cart, push cart. And people would come up, and Pat and I would have the plates ready, and they would, get their package to eat. But before that happened, I'm standing out there, and this little boy, he was a little fellow, I'd say maybe about 5, possibly 6. But he had found something that he could dig with, and he was digging the dirt over on the right side. He was digging this dirt and carrying it and coming about maybe 5 feet, 6 feet over to another part of the field and dumping it. Now, back and forth, he did that assiduously. I said, he's got a great work ethic. And later, when I reflected on that, I thought, that could be a ritual for what's going on within him, and he doesn't fully realize. But the ritual could be that everything that he has left, it's pressed down, it's suppressed. And he's taking it, and he's putting it over in this new space. And it's creating like a little hill, a little mountain. And I said, that's his hill of dreams. That's what he hopes to see and to find and to realize in this new country, in this new life, that his mom or his dad have told him about that. Another, I worked with a young woman named Rainey, and Rainey is a member of a lay group, a beautiful, beautiful woman. And Rainey had asked this woman she said, now, how was your trip? She just, as has been said before, we weren't supposed to, question them about their experience. But this was just a little kind of thing because your heart just wants to, communicate with them. And Rini didn't understand Spanish, neither did I, but we had little bits of words, But however, she called somebody, this man who was outside, and asked him to interpret for her. But she wanted to tell this woman that she doesn't have to be afraid. She can talk to Rini because Rini wants to pray with her. And she did. And through the interpreter, he said, the woman said, it was all right. I was only raped. That's all. I was only raped. That's all. God only knows, the other woman had said, what I have been through. Who knows what things they were subjected to, and especially the women. And the women and the children, I guess, too. Mm-hmm. But it's that feeling that all that they've gone through, but then the statistics that are brought out, that only a small percentage of all these people are going to make it. Only a small percentage. So do they stop coming? No. Why? Well, they may be part of that percentage. They may be part of that lottery. They may be the one. Again, belief. Again, you do what you can. You do what you can. It was an experience of realizing that we truly are brothers and sisters to one another. So that what these people are experiencing, I can't come away from there and say, well, I did my part. I went down there and I saw it and I'll tell this story. And no, that's only the beginning. We reflect, and then the next step is we act. We act. And so our action on behalf of all these immigrants is so necessary. We have to stop. Biden has to stop those laws that were made during the Trump administration. The remain in Mexico under horrible conditions. Remain in Mexico. No, that has to be. It has to be changed. So we need to. We have here American friends in Newark here, and they offer pro bono services to the immigrants. There are many other organizations. ACLU is wonderful in speaking on behalf of the immigrants as well. But there are many other organizations where they will stand up for and with the immigrants. And how about us making contacts with them? How about us trying that? What can we find? What can we find? Title 42, which was established as a health care that we should, that was the remain in Mexico, or just to turn the immigrants away because of COVID, turn the immigrants away because of COVID. Well, no one has been convicted. They're waiting, those who are asylum seekers, they are waiting for a court hearing. Yes, get them out of detention centers. Put them where they can wait. Because no one is guilty until proven. So I say my heart has been opened I am so grateful for the opportunity that our congregation has given us to have this experience and to share it. I thought when I went to Haiti that was going to turn my life around. Well, it did. It did do me halfway, but I'm still turning, and I want to turn again. So
Thanks
pray
so
for
much.
them.
Thanks, Kay. Thanks so very much. And again, let's just pause and remember all those that Kay met in Laredo. And then Pat, we'll ask you to continue. Just pause a moment, and then when you're ready. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was the other Laredo lassie that went down to Texas. And I have to say, from the moment I got there until the moment I got home, I absolutely knew I was meant to go. Laredo gave new meaning to the word, to our words, ready for any good work. Because if it had to be done, it just had to be done. And I'd say, I don't know what the other centers were like because I don't have the experience of it, but Laredo was kind of like, it sounded like smaller, obviously smaller. And if there was a job to do, you didn't ask anybody. You couldn't, nobody really had the organizational plan. So it was like yours. So you kind of owned the whole experience for the time that you were there, and which was just amazing. I'd say my heart, since coming from there and while I was there, is just so full of gratitude. That's part of it. I just feel so blessed to have had the experience. Laredo's like what seems to be a very poor town. The little where we stayed at the hotel, it was downtown area, and very little green, mostly brown, and a lot of stores boarded up. I don't think it was just COVID. I think it was before. And so you have those heavy metal doors, and that just always gives that impression of, wow, it's tough days. But anyway, it was a poor town, but everyone we met, it was so amazing, everyone. It showed us once again that this experience, as well as most all experience, it was all about relationship, totally about relationship. And no matter who you met, I'm thinking of the two girls that were on their way out one day and so excited. The little bus came to pick them up, and they were from Venezuela. And I was just giving food out or something outside, and they come and they start hugging me and kissing me. And I'm like, my first thought was, oh my God, I hope I don't get sick. I haven't hugged or kissed anybody in a year and a half. I hope I remember how, and I hope these gorgeous girls are. Woo! Anyway, which of course it was just fun. But, there was very strict mask wearing while we were there, totally everyone. So we had the people at the hotel, a man by the name of Danny, whatever we wanted, he would just get for us. Everybody around the hotel, every worker, even though the area didn't seem like a thriving, metropolis or whatever, or that there were some of the material things around that we sometimes say, gee, that makes people happy. But the people that were cleaning all around, everybody was so friendly. And then we go over to the center. Well, even before I got to the center, my first day, I had to go out and get a rental car because we got in so late on Sunday night. So I accidentally made a wrong turn, surprise. And now I'm meeting new people on my first 8 hours. But it was really the first international crisis because I found myself in the wrong lane and I'm now going over the border. We were supposed to go to the border, but I'm headed over. And all I remember ever hearing about people like in Tijuana, those places, don't, they're very strict, be very careful. I thought, well, I don't want to be held in detention on the other side and call back for that. So the man said to me, I said, oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm lost. And he said, oh, you don't want to go to Mexico? I said, I didn't say I don't want to go to Mexico. I'd love to go to Mexico. And then the man on the other side at the next teller's yelling, and he said, we have very good margaritas in Mexico. I said, well, that's even a better reason to go to Mexico, but I really have to go to my new job. And I don't know where I am. So they could not have been nicer. And that's totally opposite of anything I ever heard about people at the borders. But anyway, so they had to call in the supervisor and shut down all the lanes and open this big fence on the other side. But anyway, I got there. But it just went in line. And then we get to the center and we need the people who were there. Miss Sandy. And Miss Sandy supposedly has a job of operations manager. If anybody knows or ever meets Miss Sandy, that is what she is not. But she is the most kind, loving, compassionate, amazing human being I think I have ever met. She sort of runs it, but she doesn't know that she runs it, or I don't think she's ever been designated. And there was Miss Elizabeth, and Miss Becky was the executive director who was around all the time helping as well. But I remember, Friday we were getting ready to leave, and I had a cup in my hand, and it said, "You're an amazing person," or something. And I looked at her and I said, Miss Sandy, this is who you are, an amazing person. And she went on and on and on about the sisters. So I have to watch my time because I'm a talker.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and she said, oh no, it's you sisters who have come here to have helped us. I said, no. I said, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning back to Newark, New Jersey. And I said, you're going to be here tomorrow night till sometimes 11, 12, 1, sometimes around the clock. You have to own that you are the amazing person here. But the people on that staff, there's so few of them because Laredo is very poor. The diocese is very poor. They don't have staffing. That's why we could do whatever we wanted because everything needed to be done and you just had to own it and go about doing it in whatever way you wanted. And then I was also blessed and grateful for the sisters that we met there. You remember that movie, Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm telling you, I felt it so deeply there because in 1 second, you were just one group of people on a mission of love, doing whatever work had to come next. So that was just amazing. And then, of course, our own community, Sisters of St. Joseph, we can just all applaud because to have the vision, the holy vision and the holy decision to open this opportunity up for us and give us the means to go down there it's just, again, just so grateful for so many things there. That's everything that I encountered. And then we had the people we met, the real holy ones, I think, that I met in Laredo. Every person that got off that bus, and it was kind of hard to even watch people getting off a bus. They looked like prisoners because most of the men didn't have any shoelaces because they've been detained, no belts, and they all have to stand in line and wait. They're waiting on the bus for somebody to get them. Then they come, in our little field that Kay mentioned, and then they have to stand and wait to be seated to get a COVID testing. And then you have to wait in another line, and they're waiting and they're most patient people, but they're also the most people they're just filled with gratitude. It's hard to describe them because, we just opened a new market, a Lidl store around here, around the corner, and everybody was so grateful to have a grocery store. But man, the lines were so long and there was nobody that resembled Laredo there, including myself. It kind of brings out the worst in people sometimes. And I don't know, but these people were the best. They were so patient and so gentle when they have all these reasons of months and months of horrific, demoralizing, anything else you can think about. but yet there was the word that the mantra constantly over and over again, gracias, gracias, gracias. That's all you ever heard from them. So for me, that whole sense of being blessed with a heart full of gratitude for all the people that we met out there and everybody just joining together and working as one. But of course, there were so many times for your heart just to break. It's the nature of what we were doing. There's nothing about it that we can do what all the normal things that we did like everyone else, serving the food and working in the diaper room and working in the pantry and making those little to-go bags, so they can go off and when they, of course, we know that they're only with us for 24 hours, maybe 48 at the most. And then to at least be able to, send somebody off with, sadly, a bottle of water or some couple protein bars or things like that. But there's so many things. The dignity of the human being is just challenged. And you saw it every time another bus came in. So we would get like a group of 50 in, and they would be going through all that process of registration and COVID testing. Every person that got off that bus had a baby, had a child. Like the average wage, I think, was 3. But I don't even think a parent was over 18, 19, 20. If they were even their parents, that, of course, we don't know. But and that vision was just so hard. And all of these people want is a life, a better life for their children. And we think of probably, I don't have to go past my own family. I know what the kids in our family think their description of a better life, but their better life, as was explained to me by one of them that could speak English, was they want their children not to starve to death, and they would want their children to be killed by a gang. So the woman that Becky had registered, and the child had some marks on its face. And the woman was being a little bit, we need some attention. And there, I don't know about the other places, but there was no medical staff in Laredo. And Becky was like, well, do you realize you've brought your child through all, and she was really pushing her a little because she wanted to hear what was the underlying reason why she was there. And she said, do you realize she could have gotten anything on that journey that you brought her, and the places you've been in the last, she knew it was 3 months, and et cetera, et cetera. And the woman looked at Becky and said, you have no idea of what desperation means. Just like that. You have no idea of what desperation means. And so every one of them, I've seen some cry. They want to be in their home of origin, but they want a better life for their children. And because of that, they have that determination to do something. So then and some of the people, and similar to Kay's story, this one 16-year-old, she confided, which I thought was beautiful. She confided in one of the other immigrants she had never met, because her father, she was from Nicaragua, and her father had paid a coyote to bring her over. And that man raped her several times all along the way. And she had shared this with one of the other immigrants, who shared it with some of us, a couple that spoke Spanish. And we all got together, and she was looking at some of the rosaries that were there. So we kind of felt that she knew something about prayer. So we all kind of formed a little prayer circle around her. And I'm telling you, a sacred, more sacred moment I don't think I've ever had. And myself, one day, Miss Becky also drives the bus. She does everything. So she drives this bus that doesn't even look like it's going to make it to the next stop. And so she was gone, and these people had to get to the Greyhound. So one of the sisters drove, I went with them. Basically, 2 young men, 2 little children. One was going to New York, one was going to South Carolina. They didn't have a penny in their pocket. They had on a T-shirt, and I happened to have 2 $20 bills in my pocket, and thought, oh my gosh, this is so sad. How you can't even get something to eat for $20. but still that whole sense of gratitude. But the conditions, and we all know, we can only do this, but at all times you were thinking of the bigger picture. How can we change this? How can we make a difference? So I have not stopped talking about the border, and I'm looking at news reports, but I think the big difference for me now is when I look at those things on the news, I don't see a lot of people. I don't see people standing in line or getting off a bus. I see all those people that we worked with, that we touched, that they touched our lives, that they are now people that are just part of who we are. And it was just such a great opportunity. And I even got my family involved because I went out to buy something. The first day they were there, we had no shoes to give them, no shoes. And they said, oh, we'll double sock them. And I'm like, double sock them. So I had money, just as many of us had funds, and people gave us money because everybody wants to help at the border. And in what way? But anyway, I did go out, and then I thought, I've never bought a piece of clothing for a child in my entire life. So anyway, and I thought, I have a better idea. I'm going to put my nieces back home on this. So they start sending the things as we needed them, the Lycra pants, and they were sending dozens and dozens and dozens, and belts, and the things that even when you got them, you ran out in 2 days. So it never ends, but it's something that, stays in the heart, and which my heart is filled with gratitude, but it's also knows that there are many, many reasons for your heart to break when you think of the whole experience. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pat. Thank you. Again, let's just pause. And then we'll move to McAllen. Kathy Burton, after a pause, if you're up to sharing.
Well, I can identify, although I was at McAllen with Pat and Kay, it was a very privileged time for me. And I have to say I'm grateful to Sharon, because Sharon was the one that said, hey, why don't you do this? But for me, it was a profound experience. I can remember saying to a friend of mine that I was going down to the border, and he had been there with a group of young adults, a year or so before. And he said to me, Kathy, you will never be the same after you have that experience. And it was so true. What I really felt bad about was I didn't speak Spanish. And because of COVID, we were all masked. So I couldn't even let folks see the expression on my face. But it was such a profoundly humbling and sacred moment every day. But I also had a little insight because Sharon had been there before, and she just said to me, Kathy, it's organized chaos. Now, my definition of organized chaos certainly was not what I found when I went down there. Most of the time I was in the Roper room, the clothes room, and we tried to figure out in such a way that there were a group of us, another group of CSJs that were down with us, two of whom spoke Spanish very well and the others didn't. So we decided, because there were about 300 a day that would come through. McAllen kind of exploded after we left, but we figured let's get this organized. So we decided we'd get the clothes and give them to the individuals who spoke Spanish, and they could distribute the clothing, because the issue was people needed to get clothing so they can get a shower, because like the other centers, people were coming through and within 24 hours they were moving on to their sponsors. So there wasn't time to sit and chat or develop any kind of a relationship. It was, we needed to get these folks clothed. They did have a pharmacy there, and some of our sisters worked at the pharmacy, and again, treated mostly minor things. They did have a clinic upstairs where we were there 2 weeks. The second week we were there was a doctor there that would come periodically, so that there was some type of medical attention. But mostly during the day, it was running back and forth to keep the clothes room stocked, because the big room was upstairs. But what I found was, running from one room to the next, you'd have to go through the area where the immigrants were sleeping, and just it was their living quarters. It struck me that in the middle of the day, with all of the little kids running around, they were either playing soccer or just chasing one another or just having fun, you would see adults actually sleeping on the mats. And I could think, how could they sleep in the midst of all of this? They must have been so thoroughly exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And every day it was the same thing. And you would try to get something organized, because you figure if it's organized, it can go much more quickly. But the problem was, it was just chaotic. People were coming, and there was no time to straighten anything out or to fix anything and get it orderly. And one day, it was an overwhelming number of immigrants who would come in. It was also one of the sisters' birthdays. So Hermie, who was a volunteer down there, had arranged for a birthday cake and music for a little party. In the midst of all the chaos of trying to give out clothing, you had this birthday party going on in the middle of everything. And everybody just stopped and just enjoyed one another and played with one another. And one side of me, that side of me that's very task oriented, is, we've got to stop this so we can get the clothes given out. And the other side of me said, but people are having fun. You were beginning to, you saw the immigrants smiling. You saw the kids having fun. So what was what was more important here? Getting the task done, or just enjoying one another? I can also, say the gratitude that you experienced from the immigrants. The word gracias all the time, all the time. And again, we had no idea. I had no idea what they were going through. Someone had said one of the women had given birth while she was crossing the Rio Grande. I mean, just imagine, these are families of absolutely no privacy. They're little ones that they don't have the comfort, everything they want to give their children. One day I just looked at a group of little kids who were playing, and I thought, what potential, what gifts they have. And it's our responsibility to help those little ones and those families develop those gifts. And while I was down there, with all that chaos, I kept remembering a conference I'd heard with Father Ron Rollheiser, when he talked about the vow of poverty. And he said, as religious, we take a vow of poverty, but we're not poor. And he told a story about one of their priests, one of the oblates, who went to South America and stayed in one of the poorest of the slums. While he was down there, he got sick. He said the community came, took him, gave him the best medical attention, and then sent him to southern France to recuperate. He said he took a vow of poverty, but that certainly wasn't poor. The natives had nothing. If they got sick, it was more than likely they would die. And I looked at our immigrant guests. They were there. They had nothing. They relied on what we could give them. And we would go home after all the chaos during the day, and you didn't stop. I mean, and you could stop, because people needed to get these clothes so they can get a shower, they could eat, and they can get on their way. But when we went back, we stayed at the Basilica, which was a lovely, lovely place. The hotel staff was more than accommodating. In fact, the first night I locked myself out of my room and the security guard was lovely. But thank God Sharon spoke a little bit of Spanish, because I don't know how I would have ever gotten back in my room, because I didn't know a word of it. But the rooms were air conditioned, they were clean, they were quiet, so there was a time you could recoup. And I kept thinking back, all of those families in this huge room on those big blue mats. Every family had a huge mat. That's where they slept. That's where they sat when they were awake. That's where they played with the kids. That's where the kids played their games. It was all on this blue mat. It was for them. And I thought, wow, how humbling this was. And I was reflecting on Fratelli Tutti while I was down there, and I'm thinking, our Holy Father's giving all these directions, both individually, as countries, as a church, and it doesn't look like we're following them. And then I was, you turn the news on, and then you'd see more about immigration. And when Sharon and I were talking yesterday, I said, what I kept feeling was a sense of anger. Like, why isn't something being done? We're there. We're doing what has to be done for the moment, and that's charity. But where's the justice? Where is the things need to change? And we've got a government who's locked. If the Republicans want something, the Democrats vote it down. If the Democrats want something, the Republicans vote it down. The government inherited a mess, and it almost seems incomprehensible, but it has to be fixed. These are human lives. Mm-hmm. And our church, where are our bishops? Where all of this, where they should be so vocal. That's what should be on their top list at their meetings. But again, that was my own feeling when I came back. But to look at these families, whatever they received, you might have thought you gave them a gold mine, and it could have been a used pair of shoes. And for me, it was just walking on sacred ground. And then, of course, there was about 4 or 5 CSJs down with us, and a Dominican, and Nancy Murray, who Sharon will speak a little bit more about her. She was Bill Murray's sister.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And, just everyone just gave and gave. And it just was, it wasn't enough. It satisfied the moment. But the other thing, free time, Sharon and I went out shopping. I never even heard of Lycra. Well, we would buy like 100 pair of Lycra in a day, because there was a place had them for 99 cents. But again, and we were in the clothes room, and that's where you stayed. It was constant from the time we got there till the time we left. And sometimes it was so chaotic. Sharon and another volunteer went out and bought shelves. And in the midst of trying to give clothes out, they have men in there putting up the shelves and then getting things on the shelves. And then, of course, some of the kids would come in because they didn't know they weren't supposed to be in there. So you're kind of walking around the kids. I learned a whole new definition of organized chaos. But it was such a humbling experience. I can't tell you how grateful I was to go, to have that experience, and then to come back and share it with others. It kept reminding me of one of the times when we were down in Kentucky with the college kids, and we were talking, and we said, it's not so much what you do here, and that's important, but the experience you had, how do you carry it back and share that with others so that they too will be aware of the dignity of these individuals, and again, work for systemic change. So that was my experience, and then I'm gonna let Sharon take it from there.
All right, we'll just catch our breath. Kathy,
Right.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's so much to take in, isn't it? We'll just catch our breath, and Sharon, whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you. And well, once again, thank you for the privilege of being able to go to McAllen, and I'm very, very grateful to the congregation that I've been able to do this twice now. And the last time was different than this time. I was in just the ladies' clothing room. Here it was men, women, and children, and so it was a different experience, totally. But I'd just like to start out by saying that all the people who came to the respite center have already been vetted. They surrender to ICE at the border when they get over the border. Then they're taken to a detention center where it's determined that they are not criminals coming in, but legally seeking asylum because of trafficking, violence, crime, or murder of a loved one. Some were even forced to join gangs who would kill anyone who did not want to go along with their violence. I said to one family, it was a mother with 4 children, and I said, "Donde papa?" And all the children gathered around the mother's legs, and mom went like this. Here, the father had his throat slit when he was on a bike getting bread for the family. And she was right to seek asylum because her life was at risk. So the gangs, it's true. It's not that they're just coming here to take jobs, take our food, take health care. It's a rumor. Those who came with a parent were ages in infancy to 9 years old, 10 years old, and then the adults. The boys came separately to other places, and we did not have the boys there. I saw them on the plane on the way home, and I'm going around giving out food for them because they were sitting there all by themselves. People dropped them off at the airplane, and I said, I have these granola bars, and they just looked at me like, am I allowed to take this? And then whoever dropped them off there and stood on the side just smiled, but it was just heart-wrenching. Other children, many ended up in Dallas also, is my understanding. My heart was touched when I saw mothers and fathers arrive with children with autism or Down syndrome. And some were, as they would be, out of control and, needing the love and comfort and hugs. But there was so much stimulation. How could they stay calm? Most children just stayed very close to their parents because they looked frightened. They were uncomfortable with strangers. But if you came by and some of them were crying, so I would put nail polish on them, and then all of a sudden they would sit down, and all of a sudden everybody wanted that or whatever. One child, I had magic markers because I was trying to do labels on the bins for the clothes, and somehow a child got a hold of one, and he's writing all over everything, and then he's going to the floor, and I said, "Oh, let me see what you're doing." And Dad is like ready to, just take him apart. And I said, no, Bueno. He had a cross on his hand. I said, Bueno, oh my God, Jesus, Jesus. I'm just making such a fun, because even the parents are afraid, like what's going to happen if this child is putting crayons on something in the light of the death? What do you care about crayon on the floor? Anyway, one of my experience is at McAllen the last time. I just want to say this: 2 ladies knelt down in front of the Blessed Mother, and they just kept praying and praying and praying, and all the people were just meandering around, and they were begging for rosaries. We ran out of rosaries, so I called Peg Boyle, and I said, "Can you get me some rosaries?" And They sent down over 200 rosaries before we left. These ladies made rosaries from St. Joan of Arc. And I just can't thank people enough for the benefactors out there that sent down donations. And I want to thank Eileen and the development office. All I would say is to the people, please send it to the development office for humanitarian relief. And I was able to take all that money down there, and believe me, we used it on Lycra, which are pants, by the way, that are tight and stretchy, especially for the pregnant women. But we used it all. I mean, we were helping, and it was never enough, but we did our best. One man came in limping, and he was trying to speak to me in Spanish, and I've been studying Spanish for 3-4 years now. And he just kept pointing to his leg, and he's going like this, and he's limping. And here he wanted, I said, what do you need? Here he just wanted something to cover a wound. Well, I sent him to the pharmacy, or helped him to the pharmacy. And what I found out is he came here with his daughter. His family was murdered, and he came here with his daughter. And the coyotes are gangs along the road in Mexico. Some of you somebody said to me, "What's a coyote?" And I said, "It's not an animal. They are animals, really." But they were trying to kidnap his daughter and they took hot pipes and they were beating him with them. And he fought them off so that the daughter would not be kidnapped, because that's what they do. They just traffic and kidnap along this road. But here he was, and I'm carrying.
Is Sharon's screen frozen?
Yes, I was just going to reach out to you.
Oh, okay.
Sharon, you're back. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You were frozen for a minute.
Okay.
You were helping the man who had an injured leg.
Okay, and he just kept apologizing to me that he couldn't help me carry bags. I would be running. I was in the clothing room, and because I felt really good.
Sharon, if you can hear me, we're going to ask Seal to share her experience. And then if you get connected, we'll reconnect with you. Seal, are you okay to begin?
Okay.
Maybe I'm frozen.
No, is that all right?
Oh, okay. Yes. All
Okay.
right.
So I also was in McAllen for 2 weeks with Clarissa Vasquez, Rosemary Golden, Celeste McCricky, and Pat Harrington, one of our associates. And then 2 friends, Gloria Giordano was down for a week with us. Gloria had been on several Christ Our Light Parish missions to Guatemala. And then a friend I met last year when Maureen Erdlin and I were down in McAllen, Lisa Newhauser, she kept asking me all year to let her know if I was ever going to go back. So she wanted to go back. So at any moment, we were anywhere from 5 to 7 people in the group. And everything that Kathy and Sharon have described about McAllen, I would say, was our experience. We also started in the clothing room, which again was organized chaos. And the big thing for us was that everything the folks needed was missing. We didn't have it. We either couldn't find it or there just wasn't any. Mostly small sizes at one point, and we kept going back and forth. At one point, they kept saying, they'd say, "I need a small." So you'd go in, and if you were lucky enough to find a woman's small shirt, you'd bring it out and you'd hold it up. And they'd say, "Oh, it's so big. It's so big. Es muy grande. It's so big." So you go back, and we were bringing the girls' clothes out to the women. We got to that point. But this one day, about 3 different times, and the men, we had all these 38 waists. And so I came out with a 3XL pair of shorts. And I held them up to the family, and they looked at me like, and then they realized I was teasing them, and I said, "Your whole family could fit inside these," and they were laughing, so some humor was helpful. One of the things that was very kind of pressured was that they would arrive into the clothing room. Everywhere they went, they had these 8.5 by 11 manila envelopes, and on the envelope was a message, "Please help me. I don't speak English. Can you help me find my bus or my plane. And then on the other side of the envelope were the details of when and where they were leaving. And so it was very important to be serving them in the order in which they were departing, so that they could get a shower, they could get a clean change of clothes, etc. And we certainly felt that pressure. Those envelopes became a bit of a beacon for us in the airports, because when we got to the airport, when you took someone to the airport, you would see other families and you'd recognize them right away by the envelopes, so they became very, very helpful. Just as everyone has said, we spent a lot of time, sometimes during the day, some of us would run out, sometimes at night. We hit Goodwill Thrift. I think we filled 8 carts of clothing at Goodwill. And as everyone has said, from the generosity of the congregation and from friends. And I was praying about this one night and I thought, the hardest part of every day for me was walking out of the center, knowing that people were still in line, that people still needed things, that, but knowing that we had to take a break, like Kathy said, you had to go get a good night's sleep. And we all came home sick in our group, as you can hear. And that, I think, was because it was so overwhelming and exhausting. So really hard to walk away, and very hard to have to keep saying to people, I'm sorry, we don't have that. We don't have shoes. But all these little kids with bare feet, we don't have shoes. Sorry, we don't have clothes. And then the second week, the clothing room was shut down because of a COVID outbreak. So that meant that we couldn't give people clothing. We kept trying to go up to the warehouse or go out and shop and bring some things in. But it was really, really hard. And we learned that the urgency of the clothing, maybe we had been projecting a little bit of that ourselves. I think I would just like to say a couple things in general. One was, last night and today, I heard so many of our sisters kind of apologize or sound regretful that they didn't know Spanish. And I'm blessed to be, I'm pretty fluent in Spanish, and I was very grateful for that. But I was in awe of all the volunteers with whom I worked who didn't know Spanish. And I'll tell you, with their expressions and their hands and signs, they were absolutely valiant and wonderful. And I could tell that the people appreciated jumping over that barrier, people not letting that be a barrier. So I understand, I think, some of the regret, but I also want to say, don't take for granted and don't diminish the contribution that you made. I think that's really, really important. The other thing that I've been praying about a lot, and it happened as we were leaving the airport. Of course, when we got on the plane to come home, we had some families with us. And then as we were getting off the plane in Philly, we walked a family from Guatemala from the plane to the exit where family members were waiting for them. And we were very grateful that we had that experience, because it was kind of like the reason, that we had been doing all the work we had been doing. But I thought, we've been experiencing these borders. And last year I was in Mexico with our sisters in Mexico who run a shelter at the border with Guatemala. So I thought that this is where they start the journey, having some sense of how long the journey is, experiencing that Texas border, and then getting off the plane with them and seeing the Philadelphia International Airport through their eyes, and seeing that exit at the airport through their eyes, one more threshold to cross. And we've all said it, we have to really work hard to make sure that they are accompanied and integrated into where they're heading. They get 24 hours in McAllen is helpful, but it's no help at all if somebody's not waiting to scoop them up in Philly or Pittsburgh or Minnesota or wherever they're going. And I think Kathy's call to that kind of engagement wherever we live and systemic change is really, really important. I'm thinking of my friend that I met coming off the plane. I was telling her, we were reminding her that we were sisters. I gave her my phone number. I told her that we had a center for immigrants in Philadelphia. She was very excited to hear that. And she's been texting me on WhatsApp all day today. And she's very eager to connect. So I'll probably be calling the Welcome Center sometime very soon to see if we can make a connection for her. Another young woman who came to me was a young woman also from Guatemala who had come because they let her into the clothing room because she had had an accident. Her period had started and she really desperately needed a change of clothing. So I got her into the bathroom, and when she came out, she just kind of threw herself into my arms. She was sobbing, and they couldn't get a hold of her uncle or her husband. One was in California, one was in Connecticut. She said, they're close to each other, right? I said, no, but it's not, we can take care of this. And told me that on the road from Guatemala, trying to get her boys out of Guatemala into the United States, both she and they had been raped. And she was so worried about, would her boys ever forgive her that happened to them? And so I was talking about the future, and they were young, and there'd be resources for her here. And I told her I had been to Guatemala, and I described some of the places I had seen and how beautiful the land is, and the little farms, the little gardens they have and everything. And she said, you're going to think she's sobbing. You're going to think I'm such a silly girl. I said, why? She said, I miss my chickens. I miss my chickens. She's sobbing. And she said, I miss them. And I said, well, of course you miss them. And she said, I can't eat them. I said, because they're pets. She said, that's right. And I thought, it was so tender. It was so tender. And just, she didn't want to leave her home. She did not want to leave her home. And yet she had to. And so I know I'm echoing what everyone has already said. And I think we all know that these folks are not, they're not here for any other reason except the desperation that they're fleeing. And I just hope that we can continue to send people, of course, continue to stay connected. Just as I was getting on at 3:15, Armenia put a thing up on Facebook. Again, we're desperate for bottles and sippy cups at the McAllen Respite Center. So I, threw it on my page, and already people are saying, I'm sending some. But as people said, we would go out and buy literally, no exaggeration, 300 bottles and sippy cups, walk in at 9:30 in the morning, and by 11:30, they were gone. One day there were 1,700 people in the respite center. In one day, 1,700. So it can feel desperate, and it can feel, I sometimes, I had that, I prayed a lot with St. Augustine walking on the beach and watching the little kid dig the hole and try to fill it with water, and laughing at the little guy. Remember the story? And he said, you're never going to fill that hole with water. And the child looks at him and says, and you're never going to understand the mystery of the Trinity, and I thought, what's the mystery that God is inviting us to enter in all of this? What's the mystery? And I'm just so grateful that we have each other. I was very grateful to have my companions with me. I had wonderful, wonderful sisters and associates and friends. But I hope we will continue to ponder this together and see what's the next thing that God's asking us to do.
Thanks so much, Seal. Thank you. Sharon, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. We have a few minutes. I'm sorry we had
and I see that we only have, so I will keep it to the 5 minutes because I realize people's time is valuable here. I'm just going to finish up with my systemic change ideas. So the words that came to me are friendship, and I'm going to read this so I don't belabor it. The words that come to me are friendship, exhaustion, determination, and advocacy. I left feeling totally exhausted, and it took a while to recover both physically and emotionally from the experience. I have been fortunate to be in conversation with many SSJs, as well as other sisters and lay volunteers while at the border and on the return. So I feel like my relationship continues, and the advocacy and the understanding of what's happening there continues, which has been a grace for me. I do believe that if sisters are going to continue to serve at the border, that we need a system in place following the Red Cross protocol. Some of you know that I'm a volunteer, where the sisters are contacted during their stay to provide support and determine their needs and concerns if they have them. Then when they return, each sister should be given an opportunity to debrief, whether it's in a group or individually. The range of emotions and sense of never being able to do enough is very normal, but certainly leaves an impact on all of us, as many have already said. I'm grateful for the opportunity and for the congregation that was provided. Lastly, Network has begun to ask sisters to arrange formal Zoom meetings to speak, to arrange with their state representatives on behalf of the immigrants. Pat Madden, Jane Large, and I observed a preparation meeting with the CSJs. One is on today, Mary Jo. Hello, Mary Jo. Who will be contacting their representative over the next few weeks. They've prepared an outline with the help of Network, which they will share with those of us in Pennsylvania. And we hope to be in conversation with our state representatives, a formal conversation, so that they can understand what we experience. Some politicians are already in support of immigration, but they need the support of our voices to document that their constituents have a voice and want to be heard. It's my hope that the SSJ leadership, our community, will continue, and you've already done it, and you've already supported us, but will continue regular statements about our concerns about immigration. And that LCWR will continue to use their voices. We have a corporate voice that needs to be heard, so that we need to empower our bishops to become more vocal, encouraging priests to spend time encouraging and challenging all to be the body and blood of Christ in our daily lives. So namaste and gracias to all. And I continue to advocate, and anything that I can do for anyone who's going, who has been there, I'm here. And I love you all. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, we're really just down to the minute. Sharon, I did write down some of your suggestions and I'm grateful. So thanks. Thanks so much. Just this is a public announcement, public service announcement. If as long as there's a need at the border, we're willing to encourage and support sisters who are interested in going. So if you're aware of someone, or if someone's on the Zoom right now and thinks that maybe they'd be interested, you might want to talk to someone who was there to get a sense of what is going on. Yesterday, we clearly heard that it was helpful to be with other people, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's certainly something to take into consideration. We can't begin to thank the volunteers. As I said, by the end of the summer, we will have 22 sisters and 1 associate who will have served at the border. And we are so grateful that each of you, in some small way, in some big way, carried all of us with you. So we're grateful. We may not have gone with you, but our hearts went with you. Mm-hmm. So we thank you. We're so grateful. And thanks to everyone who took the time to join us, today. Our last Zoom will be on August 31st, and that's to accommodate the sisters who are going, the volunteers who will be serving during August. So we'll keep you posted, and certainly any ideas or suggestions that you have, feel free to send them to us. So we're very grateful. So thanks a million.
Thanks to all the speakers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to the speakers. Well done.
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let us continue to remember our dear neighbors.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
I'm wearing my honorary SSJ Chestnut Hill T-shirt.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
CSJs. Thank
What
you,
a
Mary
great
Jo.
idea.
What a
Bye.
great idea to do things. Bye-bye.